Hello, what's going on? Today we're talking about something that was actually requested on the last video, and I thought it was actually a really good idea, because it's really interesting. I actually haven't done a video on this topic just yet, but today we're effectively going to be ranking, also it's really bothering me that these are both yellow. Today we're going to be ranking the max moves and how good they are comparative to the other ones. So obviously there's a couple things to consider here. We're not going to be talking about any of the G-Max moves because those are their own kind of like separate thing. But yeah, as most of you have played Sword and Shield probably know, when you Dynamax a Pokemon, all of their base moves get overwritten and replaced with the max version of those moves. Earthquake, Bulldoze, Drill Run, High Horsepower all become Max Quake, etc., etc., and then all status moves become Max Guard, which I won't be ranking because it's just Protect. And it doesn't really make sense in this context. Of course, the power of these moves can vary, so, Milotic using Max Quake off of Mudshot is very different than Landorus using Max Quake off of an Earthquake, right? So, that's something to keep in mind. But in general, these all have unique secondary effects, right? Each of them has a distinct secondary effect that does something and are pretty important in almost every battle you're going to play. So I thought we'd talk about kind of how good they are, both the typing that they are, and then the effect that they have. And so, yeah, let's jump into it. So first off is Bug. I don't think Bug is the worst, but it's not very good. I think the real issue with Bug is that there aren't that many good Bug types right now. So even though the effective Bug, which is, actually pretty decent, dropping special attack. If Max Darkness drops special attack, Max Darkness would be S tier for sure, for example. But Bug is not a very good offensive type. That being said, the effect isn't bad, and, if you're using Assaultless Landorus with Max, with U-Turn, you can use Max Flutterby off of that. And there are certain Pokemon who can use it well. I've definitely used Max Bug in certain situations, and it can be good. Dropping Special Attack is debatably better than dropping Physical Attack in a lot of situations. So it's not that Max Bug is, bad because of the secondary effect. It's just that Bug is the worst typing, right? And so for that reason, it's just not very good offensively. Yeah, you can hit grass types, although the two biggest grass types right now are Cortana and Amoonguss, and both of those are neutral to Bug. You can hit psychic types and dark types, but psychic types, a lot of them have dual typing, and there's not even that many psychic types right now overall. Tapu Lele, Metagross are both resistant, or are both neutral versus Bug. And yeah, you can hit dark types with it as well, but dark types have plenty of weaknesses overall. So yeah, for that reason, I'm going to put Bug in the C tier. Not the worst by far. If you there are definitely situations where it's good, but not the best either. Next up is Max Grass. Max Grass is interesting. It sets up grassy terrain. So I really like Max Grass in certain situations. It does a couple things. The first is obviously it overwrites your opponent's terrain. So Max Grass can be really good in situations where you have a Pokemon with Spore, right? And you want to make it so that your Amoonguss can spore things. Let's say you have Charizard Amoonguss and they have Tapu Fini on the field. Max Grass overwrites Misty Terrain, and then you are actually able to use Spore with that. Additionally, obviously you override other terrains. You also give everybody healing for 4 turns, which can be useful. You also power up Grass moves. So Max Grass, I think, is actually pretty good. I'm putting it in the A tier. Grass is a solid offensive type. It hits Rock, it hits Water, it hits Ground, all of which are relatively... Water's not that big right now, but Rock and Ground are... Ground is big, and then Rock is picking up as well in the current meta. And yeah, I think my favorite, it's just that Max Grass is pretty versatile. I listed out 3 pretty reasonable uses for it, because obviously you overwrite Mystic Terrain. You also can overwrite Electric Terrain, which is more offensive, and Psychic Terrain, which is also more offensive. So yeah, and then Pokemon like Cortana, for example, Max Overgrowth is really strong, especially with Beast Boost, because you're effectively giving your next Grass move a Life Orb boost, which is very threatening coming off of a Dynamax Pokemon. So yeah, I think Max Grass is overall one of the better Max moves in the game. Max Ooze, I think, is our only D tier one. They're all not bad. You could maybe argue this is C tier. I think the issue with Max Ooze is that, a lot of the time with your Max moves, you're going to want to be doing damage, and, after one Max Ooze, your next Max Ooze is the same as if you, it's normally going to be the same base power as if, if it had, normal base power. Sorry, for those of you who don't know, all Max moves follow pretty much the same pattern. Most moves become 130, weaker moves become 120, there's a couple moves that become 110. I think some of the weakest moves become 90, but almost every move that you're going to be seeing in competitive play is going to be 130. A couple exceptions to that, like Ancient Power Colossal is only 110, but that was because it was its best rock move for a while. Doesn't really matter. Most moves become 130. However, because they were worried that Poison and Fighting would actually be too strong, instead what they did is they made Poison and Fighting different. They basically cap at, I think, 95 base power, which is roughly a 1.5 times power decrease. The benefit of using them is that They do give you, Poison gives you a special attack boost, Fighting gives you a physical attack boost. However, they're not strong enough. And I think I'd rather have these ones be not as strong. Like, I'd rather have Poison and Fighting be some of the weaker ones, because, like, if these are strong, it could be really bad for the game, in my opinion. So I'm not opposed to the fact that they're bad, but yeah, Poison I think is the worst max move, which is kind of counterintuitive, because you would think that getting a special attack boost on both your Pokemon is pretty valuable, but I think there's a couple of factors that go into it. Number one is that there's not that many good Poison types, and most of them, like, there's like Amoonguss who's not going to max, right? There is Gengar who was around for a while, but, like, what are even the other Poison types? Like, Gengar really wants the immediate power. Like, it doesn't have the bulk. Venusaur is another Pokemon which, like, a lot of the time just wants the immediate power. Although, Venusaur is one of the best users of Max Ooze. I talked about Genjar. These Pokemon don't really max most of the time. Yeah, there's not that many good Poison types right now, especially ones that want to max. A couple exceptions to that are Dragargle. Dragargle was pretty good. Nihilego now is pretty strong as well. So yeah, so maybe with, honestly, okay, Nihilego's picked up in popularity a lot, so maybe with Nihilego's rise, it's like Poison will do better. It just feels like a lot of the time with Poison, you'd rather have the immediate power spike, right? Rather than the setup for the next turn. Because you really want to be KOing things with your max moves, and like, yeah, like if you send a turn like getting plus, like let's say you attack a protected one, then you get, you waste a turn 2, and then like you only get one max move off. It's just like not as consistent in my opinion. So yeah. Max Hailstorm is pretty good. This is a tricky one because the effect is that it sets up the hail, but Ice is a pretty strong offensive type. I think this is B or A tier. Ice is a really good offensive type. It's not a great defensive type, but offensively it's really phenomenal. Being able to hit dragons, grass, and ground is all really helpful right now, because there's a lot of those in the format. And yeah, hail is actually pretty nice as well, because like there's a fair bit of, this is probably in all of 2020, maybe not the least weather's ever been used, but pretty close to it. Like, weather's pretty much on the downward trend right now. And, well, actually, sorry, it's on an upward trend, but it's kind of it bottomed out for a little bit in early 2021. And so, like, even though weather, like, isn't that popular, like, setting hail up is like, still pretty nice. There's a lot of situations where you want to break a Focus Sash in the opposing team, where you want the chip damage, especially on Pokemon that have Life Orb, and also it's just nice to have it as a contingency plan to deal with Sun, to deal with hail, stuff like that. So I don't know. I like hail. I think it's like a super solid thing. Basically, the secondary effect isn't that good. However, the offensive type coverage is really nice. Rock is next. So I'm actually, you might be surprised, but I'm gonna put Rock in A. I think Rock is in the A tier, in my opinion, because what Max Rockfall does is, unlike hail, sand is a better weather than hail. Why is that? Well, I'll tell you. Sand is better weather than hail because although hail all it does is chip every Pokemon that isn't ice type, sand actually gives rock types a special defense boost, a 1.5 times special defense boost. This is the reason why Tyranitar is such a powerful Pokemon, and has been such a powerful Pokemon for so many years. Now, Tyranitar obviously has good base stats and sets up the sand for itself, which makes it super bulky. Other rock types don't have Sandstream, so traditionally they haven't been able to set up their own Sandstorm, meaning if they want to get like the special defense boost from Sandstorm, they need to rely on Tyranitar, Hippowdon, or Jigglypuff, or something like that. Now, with Max Rockfall, rock types are actually able to set up their own Sandstorm, meaning, like, let's say I have a Pokemon like, that's a good example, like Regirock, right? And I want to, like, Regirock doesn't have good special defense at all, but if you Dynamax it and use Max Rockfall, I'm able to basically boost my special defense. It's not as good as, like, Max Quake or Max Steel Spike, but, yeah, like, it's still very, very good. Also, I think there needs to be another tier here, as I'm thinking about where the tiers are going. This is B+. Yeah. So, basically, sand, same reasons as hail is good. It chips Pokemon. It doesn't chip as many Pokemon, but it, can break Focus Sash and Urshifu Pokemon like that, on Regieleki, stuff like that. But really, the nice thing is that not only does it override opposing weathers, but it also gives rock types a special defense boost. So that's really good. I think normal's S+. This doesn't get much play because, like, there aren't that many good normal types, but with Regigigas, like, picking up in popularity, I think this is really, really strong. Like, it's funny because normal, like, it doesn't hit anything for super effective, and has it has, like, a fair few common resistances in Rock and Steel, and even Ghost is not super common. And there's not that many good normal types, but I honestly think this move is phenomenal. You could argue maybe it's S tier. Actually, maybe that's fair. Okay, I'm putting it in S tier. It's still really good, though. Like, PZ, like, basically, like, there's not very many good Max Strike users, but when a Pokemon has Max Strike and is good, it's terrifying. The best users by far so far have been Regigigas and PZ. It's basically like it's not as good as Airstream, but the benefit is that you have stronger normal type moves that you're able to use. So Pokemon like Regigigas and PZ has access to Hyper Beam, Regigigas has access to Giga Impact. And these moves hit so unbelievably hard coming off of these Pokemon that like not only are they like very difficult to switch into, not only is your Steel type still probably getting 2 KO'd, right? Not only is this OHKOing pretty much everything, not only can they pair these with really scary support Pokemon like Weezing and Clefairy, right? But in addition to all of that, they're also dropping your speed. So you have 150 base power coming off of these gigantic Pokemon, right? And you can't really protect in front of it, like, because if you protect and you're like, you can't like protect a piece and reposition a lot of the time because you're like almost guaranteed to be slower next turn thanks to Max Strike dropping your speed. So I think this move is phenomenal, primarily because like you have such strong 150 base power moves that you're able to activate, and the effect is good, and you hit so many things for neutral, and yeah, it's just really, really scary. I think this is a phenomenal one. Fighting, I think, is C tier. I don't think Fighting is as bad as Poison, in large part because Fighting is a better type than Poison offensively. So, although the secondary effect has the same issues with Poison, like you're, boosting your attack and you're not doing very much damage that turn, so you're not making as good use of your max turns. But Fighting hits Steel, it hits Rock, it hits Normal, and for that reason, it's actually like pretty like. Because you can hit things for super effective with Fighting, and that's not something you're going to be doing very often with Poison, you can justify actually using this, because on the first turn, you can still do big damage if you're hitting things for super effective. And the secondary effective Fighting is, it kind of takes two roles. Number one, you're maxing a Fighting type, like when we're maxing Conkeldurr, and because Fighting actually only has a couple weaknesses, Flying and Fairy and Psychic aren't... Flying and Fairy specifically are kind of bad weaknesses to have, but a lot of fighting types that you're going to max, like Conkeldurr, would run coverage for that, like Ice or Thunder Punch. So, yeah, basically, because fighting is neutral, takes neutral damage from a lot of things, a lot of the time you're going to have pretty good bulk, you can stick around better, you can stick around for longer, you're not weak to moves or to types like Ground, for example, and then you can get your boost, and then you can start firing off better, stronger attacks. The second option of fighting is as a coverage move. Pokemon like Tyranitar and Glastrier typically run Superpower as their third or fourth move, depending on how you think about it. And with those Pokemon, it's kind of like, it's a nice option, right? It gives you coverage, it lets you hit things, it gives you a strong move outside of Max. And in addition to that, it can give you an attack boost. So on Pokemon like Tyranitar and Glastrier, which often run some kind of boosting item, either Weakness Policy or Life Orb, these Pokemon can boost their attack and their partner's attack as well. Also, Pokemon like Cortana can use this move as well. When you're expecting a defensive turn from your opponent, you don't have a better move to do. Getting an attack boost can be really nice. I know it seems weird that Fighting is so much better than Poison, but I think it's largely because Fighting is a more splashable coverage type. Meaning like Pokemon like Cortana, Glastrier, and Tyranitar, those are all good Pokemon that run it. There's others as well, obviously. And with Poison, you're very rarely running Poison as a coverage move. I think that's in large part because there's Superpower, which is a 120 base power move, whereas Poison doesn't have an equivalent to that. So overall, Fighting's a lot better. It's a more splashable better. It's got better coverage, etc., etc. Dark, I think, is A tier. Dark is really good because a lot of Dark types right now are special, which was not, I think, the case earlier in the format. Sorry, I know that I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything, so looking through this helps me. So there's Moltres, which is our primary Dark type right now. Cheetar isn't as big right now, although it's still around. That's pretty much it, right? Hydreigon isn't really around. Yveltal isn't legal. Incineroar, you're not maxing. Yeah, this is pretty much just Moltres, and sometimes Urshifu is normally going to run Gmax most of the time. Okay, Dark is really good because although there's not that many good Dark types right now, the thing about Dark is that it drops special defense. And so that allows, special Dark types to combo into each other, but it also allows, a faster Max Dark Pokemon to combo into a slower special attacker. Dropping the special defense of your opponent is very, very, very valuable. Yeah, Dark is and Dark, although it has pretty common resistances in Fairy, that's probably why it's not S or S plus tier. What else resists Dark? Dark resists Dark, Fighting resists Dark, but Fairy's the big one. Dropping your opponent's special defense is such a valuable thing, and it can really put your opponent out of position. What I like about Max Darkness as well is that if it's your last turn of Max and your opponent wants to play defensively and protect both their Pokemon, you can still make sure effectively that you're doing big damage next turn by just going into for Max Darkness into the Protect, and then although you're not doing as much damage as you would have done if they hadn't protected, you're setting up for the future, assuming you have a special attacker. So yeah, Flying is by far the best Max move. Being able to boost your speed is incredibly effective. It's incredibly powerful. It's incredibly potent. Yeah, it's this is by far the best Max move. It's better than normal because while normal drops your opponent's speed, if you get the KO, then that is reset. However, flying boosts your own speed, so you're able to really snowball it into like potentially game-winning situations. Because if you take your opponent KOs at that position, you just continue to win, right? You still have your boosted speed Pokemon. So a lot of VGC since Sword and Shield were released have centered around Max Airstream. It's by far the best Max move. Flying is in large part because of Max Airstream and Dynamax and weakness policy stuff, but primarily Max Airstream. Flying is one of the best types in the game right now, and it also makes flying coverage moves pretty valuable, which is not bad at all. You hit grass types, you hit fighting types. Like, flying is pretty difficult to switch into a lot of the time. Like, although it is resisted by rock and steel and electric, it can still be really difficult to switch into these Pokemon, and flying is really good moves as well. There's Brave Bird on the physical side, there's Hurricane on the special side. It's the best Max move, in my opinion, by far. Fairy I'm putting in the A tier. This, since it Misty Terrain, this is a nice defensive, this is annoying me. This is nice defensive, Max move. The reason it's not B tier, because like the effect is maybe, you could argue, is maybe worse than Hail a lot of the time, but the reason it's not B tier is because Fairy is such a strong type. We talked about this when I did the typings overall, but Fairy is debatably the best type in the game, so yeah, for that reason, like, even though Max Starfall, which is Misty Terrain, isn't like that useful a lot of the time for the users, this still gets the spot and in the A tier overall. The reason Max Starfall is nice is just because it gives you insurance against like slower Pokemon like a Amoonguss, right? Who could potentially be used as Explorer, it blocks Thunder Wave, it can block Will-O-Wisp, and it also has Dragon attacks, which like frankly doesn't come up super often, like almost never. Yeah, like it's almost never coming up, but there are some situations where it's relevant. So yeah, Fairy A tier. Steel is, I'm going to do Steel and Ground at once. They're both S tier attacks. Similar to Flying, these are the defensive equivalents. Now, you can see that there's five moves that boost your stats. There's Flying, Steel, Ground, Fighting, and Poison. Now, you might notice a trend. Flying is the best, boosting your speed. The offenses would probably be S+ as well, if they were like the same base power, but because they aren't the same base power as these, and they're like actually significantly weaker, therefore they rank significantly weaker. And then Steel and Ground are not quite as good as Flying, but are still ridiculous. I think another big part of this is that it boosts both your Pokemon and your partner Pokemon, like both Pokemon on your side of the field, rather than just the only one on your side of the field. Like, the whole game would be different in that case. So why are Steel and Ground good? They boost your defenses, right? Not only are they really solid offensive types, not only are they normally paired together a lot of the time as well, but boosting your partner, like, not only do you boost your own special, or your own bulk, but you can also boost your partners, and that's really valuable in a lot of situations. You have a really bulky Pokemon like Dusclops with Max Quake and Max Steel Spike boosts, it's going to be very difficult to remove, right? But also a frailer Pokemon, like, you know, let's say you've maxed your, let's say you maxed, I don't know, something, and you have a Kartana next to it, right? Giving it special and physical defense boosts are going to make that Pokemon that's typically thought of as relatively frail a lot more difficult to remove. Maybe it takes 2 hits instead of 1 to knock it out. Maybe it takes 3 instead of 2, right? And the whole time, you know, you're boosting 2 of your Pokemon's defenses. So, while normally a defense boost only, you know, like a +1 is only going to affect 1 Pokemon, because it affects both, like, it's like basically your opponent now has to worry about 2 Pokemon that are additionally bulky. So, yeah, this also pairs really well with Weakness Policy Pokemon. I think this is part of the reason Weakness Policy Excadrill was such a thing for a while. They would get defense and special defense boost because of that's most of the moves that Excadrill is going to use. And then if you attacked it, you would activate Weakness Policy, and if you didn't attack it when Dynamax ended, they would Swords Dance. And then they were, you know, boosted attack, boosted defenses. It's overall just phenomenal. And there's a lot of Pokemon that, like, after 2 or 3 boosts, just become like a nightmare. Dusclops especially. Like, if I ever have a situation where I can get, like, my opponent's out of physical attackers and I get +2 special defense on Dusclops, I'm feeling pretty good, you know? Yeah. Next up is Water. Max Geyser is a very good Max move. Sets with the rain. But it's not S tier in my opinion. Like, it is normally only going to benefit the user. Most rain teams, like most teams that really want the rain to be up, are going to have Politoed. Or if you're really bad, you'll run Pelipper. But, so, like, you're normally not going to need a way to set the rain up in that situation, although it can be nice in Weather Wars, etc., but most of the time you don't need it. And then most teams that aren't rain-centric that set up Max Geyser, it's only going to benefit the user. So although the effect is really good, and that's why it's in the A tier, it's not benefiting the whole team a lot of the time. There's some exceptions, right? When Primarina Ferrothorn was a really big core, Primarina would set up the rain, which would benefit Ferrothorn, but mostly you're just powering up your next Water-type move at 1.5 times. So it's like a great offensive type. Water is also a good defensive type as well, but really good offensive type. It can snowball into itself because rain obviously boosts the next Water-type attack, but because it only affects the user. Like, everything up here affects it affects the field in one way or another, right? And Max Darkness even affects the field as well. But yeah, a lot of these are like solid, but like they only affect the user, or they affect the whole field, but they're not super strong. Dragon, I think, is a solid B tier. I really like Dragon. Dragon is like Bug in that it drops the physical attack, unlike the special attack of Bug, but it's another one of the dropping stat effects. But the thing about Dragon is that it's just not super strong in the current format, in large part because of Tapu Fini. So Tapu Fini, obviously, when it switches in, it's Misty Terrain. Misty Terrain halves the damage of all Dragon-type attacks of Pokemon touching the ground. And also, you can't hit Fairy types with Max Dragon. So it's a bit of a risky move to use if your opponent is a Fairy type, even before Tapu Fini. Most teams had a Fairy type, most teams had Togekiss on them, and so like if you max a couple, like Raichu's good, but you don't max it. Rotom-Wash is okay. Am I missing anything? You know, you're not really Tapu Koko anymore. Honestly, I don't know why, but I think Electric might be S tier. Blocking Sleep is really nice. Like that's the most dangerous status outside of Freeze, but since Freeze isn't consistent anyway, you're not gonna be setting Misty Terrain most of the time specifically to block for a Freeze. Electric Rain blocks Sleep, the most annoying status to deal with, and it also like powers up electric moves by 1.3 times, and that's all it does. So it feels like it should be about as good as the others, but I think just because Electric is such a solid offensive type right now, like it hits a lot of things for neutral. If we were to look at, like, it just hits a lot of these Pokemon for neutral, or super effective, right? There's, I mean, you know, there's actually a fair few resistances, and Pokemon that don't take that much damage from it. I don't know why, but, like, I feel like my brain is saying Electric should be A tier, but my heart really says it's an S tier type. I think it's really, really strong offensively. You can disagree with, I mean, you can disagree with anything, but this one is kind of questionable, I guess. I don't know why, but Max Lightning, whenever I use it, just feels so powerful, and I can't explain why. That's just, that's a gut feeling thing. Sun, similar to Rain, actually exactly the same as Rain. It powers up the user, it's strong offensively, but it really only benefits the user a lot of the time, and like, I don't know, if sometimes it can be a bit win more, like if they just have a faster Pokemon that can, like, have a different max move, then it overwrites these, so you can lose your, like, it's a lot easier to lose the advantage you gain from these than types like these four, and then I don't know why Electric's really strong. This basically is like a pseudo Knuckle. It's kind of like what Knuckle would be if basically give yourself a pseudo attack boost for the next turn, or until they switch or until they overwrite it. So although this is only really relevant on Pokemon like you don't really want to max Aegislash, Decidueye sometimes if you, I guess you could pair Spectre or something here as well. But yeah, Ghost is really, really, really strong on those Pokemon. The real thing is just that like it makes it so that it's really difficult. Like, it's like you hyping. It's only resisted by Dark, and it's immune. Like, Normal is immune to it. But we already mentioned how Normal isn't that popular, so it's kind of just Dark types right now, which can easily deal with Ghost types. And yeah, like, so hitting things, even though you're not hitting that many things, are super effective because you're such a strong neutral type against so many things, and you power yourself up by using Max Phantasm. It was a lot better when it was a lot better before Tapu Fini was introduced. Just by putting Psychic above B tier, just because, like, yes, you set up the Psychic Terrain for Expanding Force, but yeah, although this move is really strong in terrain, it's just so easy to overthink is the real thing. If you can keep the terrain on the field, I'm saying, okay, Psychic is probably A tier or maybe even S tier. Depends. So difficult to keep your terrain up, and because this move just is kind of underwhelming outside of terrain, I can't put it very high. So that's my list. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree with anything. Let me know if you disagree with. I think this is pretty reasonable. Like, obviously it's subjective, and you know, people will probably disagree. I do feel strongly that Flying is the best and Poison is the worst. So yeah, if you're thinking about like, oh, look, what max moves are good, what max moves are not good, maybe this is helpful to you. Maybe, you know, I mean, there's more to deciding what moves go into Pokemon than what the max moves are, but it's something to consider, right? Like, you're stuck between two, and you're stuck between Bug and, I don't know, Ground in some situation. Typically, Ground is going to be better, but yeah, obviously nothing's set in stone. So anyway, thanks for watching.